on what's in the supermarket, you were effectively lost control. Once you can't feed yourself. And of course, we're seeing the same thing going on in China. I mean, the massive thing that's occurred in China is the shift of the population from the rural areas. They've gone from about 80% to rural down to less than 50% in about 10 years. And the demand for homes and so on is driving a lot of that economy. And so the population idea really got to a peak back in the 70s. Now, one of the things that drove it, and this is when I started my climate career, was that global cooling was the consensus then, and that's why I'm not a consensus person, because in the CIA were doing reports on, the world's overpopulated, and we're not going to be able to feed ourselves with this global cooling, and out of that, of course, the Club of Rome, and there was a meeting in Rome in 1976 about the world's going to starve to death by the year 2000, and the simplistic computer models, which are at the basis of all of these problems, we're just saying, here's the trend, and it's going to continue, and the world simply can't survive past. And all of those predictions are wrong, but somehow they've still got the floor. And people like Paul Ehrlich, who was the one that was pushing the overpopulation idea, was at the heart of that. And then, of course, Gore organizing that conference in Cairo, Egypt. What better place than to say, look, there's poverty due to overpopulation right outside the window. And that idea of the world's overpopulated, of course, the question you got to ask is, which populations have we got too many of? Which ones are we going to, eliminate? How are we going to thin the herd? I mean, just frightening implications to all of this focus upon world overpopulation.
That's right. It's seen as common knowledge by any of the intelligentsia to go, the people bomb. We've got to cull the population. Well, then ask, who are we going to cull? Who are we going to kill? And then you look at the point you just made, that we're actually concentrated populations, and that once a nation becomes industrialized, they actually begin to have negative population growth, like Europe with 1.3, Japan with 1.3, Italy with even lower, 1.2. Europe is dying, Russia is dying, the United States is dying if it wasn't for the massive immigrant replacement influx. And so, and the UN admits that if they just industrialize the third world, that it would actually lift them up and they wouldn't have so many children. But you read the World Population Report put out by the UN, you read the Royal Commission on Population put out by the British government, they say that population and industrialization is the threat. And so they say, we're not going to give them industrialization. We're going to let their population swell to keep them down, and then we're going to use birth control and sterilization and war and famine to then cull that mass. So use the people bomb as a weapon to keep the third world down, then kind of exterminate them with war, famine, and sterilization. So the eugenicists aren't even doing what they're saying. It's not some high and mighty eugenicist view that's bad enough, but with some rationale. This is just a cover story for kind of low-level thugs to carry out the eugenics. The top guys are just playing a global game of Risk to knock out all their enemies.
Exactly, and what you're talking about there is the demographic transition. Anybody can Google that phrase, demographic transition, and it's the well-documented showing that as you become industrialized, first of all, the death rate goes down, and but then it's followed by the birth rate goes down, and then the population starts to decline. And of course, a lot of countries are offsetting this by paying people to have a third child. I know Quebec up in Canada here, Italy's done it, but also a lot of countries it's being masked by immigration. And if you look at that in the U.S. and the discussion about immigration, so it's masking the actual demographic transition that's going on. And
that's why Germany and France are full of North Africans and Arabs. Because some German cities have half the population they did just 40 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, there's no question. And as I said, at that conference in Rome in 1976, one of the arguments by a lot of the countries was, look, let us industrialize, and that will cause the population to decline. And of course that was rejected completely. But the whole idea about if you want to limit. By the way, just very interesting thing, Alex, is that you can calculate this out yourself. But if you the average family of about 2.7, 2.8 people, you could put them in 1,000 square foot homes on 3,000 square foot lots with roads and parks and the normal facilities, and the population under those conditions, which would be ideal in most of the world, all of the world's population could fit in the southern half of Alberta. Now, would Albertans like that? Probably not. But it gives you an idea. When you look at Canada, for example, here we are, the second largest country in the world, and we've got a population equal to California. And so when you start talking about overpopulation, it's absolute nonsense. And of course, the other thing that came out of that conference in Cairo, they were pointing the finger at Asia and Africa, saying, "Oh, they're overpopulated." The country with the highest population density in the world is the Netherlands, but they got one of the highest standards of living. So when you start to look at the statistics and what was going on with all of this, the overpopulation thing, and it's a thing that people fear. Oh, I don't want more people in my neighborhood.
Exactly. It's that it's not industrialized is why Calcutta is a cesspit. It is because it's not industrialized that Mexico City is a hell pit. We've got to industrialize them with the new clean industries. But the globalists, when you really read their papers, they're suppressing all that. That's why it's so sickening. They claim, oh, we want to make you adopt new clean systems. They're actually vertically integrating things, cutting off the capital of the world in their own documents to suppress clean development. And they want dirty, sprawling third world because it's a ball and chain that keeps these people down. Folks, you can just Google his name and read all of his great writings. I really appreciate Dr. Tim Ball, climatologist, joining us. And I'm going to have my producer call you right now and book those flights for you to be in studio with us coming up in a couple weeks. And I can't wait to shake your hand in person, Doctor. Thank God that more and more people, like yourself, are out there speaking out and standing up. And together, as Thomas Jefferson said, all that evil men and tyrants need to flourish is that good men and women do nothing. And with good men like you out there taking action, I think we're starting to really turn the tide against these people. That's why they really pressed and passed this climate takeover in the House. But I think that's the beginning of the end for them. Thank you so much, Dr. Ball.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Great talking to you. All right, we'll come back. Hit news. Rivero's popping in on what's happened to Cynthia McKinney. Israeli forces have grabbed her, the news is reporting. The BBC has hit me and hit me hard in a savage attack, which I say means we are over the enemy target, hitting them hard.